on issues relating to fertility. There are a lot of fertility-related issues that come up on Shabbos, injections and other things, and the Weitzman is uniquely qualified to be able to deal with these issues and to answer these shilas and to tell you what all the Gedolei HaPoskim have to say about these shilas, because he's spoken to them personally. Again, as I mentioned to the previous group, that more than just, I mean, it would be important enough to hear this year and to be able to learn about these issues. But even more important is to be able to learn who Rav Weitzman is, who Machon Pua is, so that you'll know where the address is when these questions inevitably come up. Anyone who's going into Rabbanon, so as I said yesterday, anybody who's ever going to have Talmidim that asks some questions are going to have to deal with fertility related questions. It's something that's a very, 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 very common thing nowadays, and we're very privileged to have one of the world's experts here with us this morning.
So you'll forgive me from reading from the computer. I'm sorry. Thank you very much, Rabbi Leibowitz, for asking me to speak to this very, very bad kibbutz. תלמידי חכמים, לדור העתיד ופסקי ההלכה בעזרת השם. The Shulchan Aruch, the Beit Yosef in Shin Chavchet. You didn't get the Shin Chavchet yet? Didn't get it. So in Shin Chavchet, the Beit Yosef says the following. Gemara says, Kol refuah asur lasot b'Shabbat. We know the Gemara already says us. Gemara in Masechet Shabbat says you can't do any refuah on Shabbat. So Gemara in Masechet Avodah Zarah says, Ein shemalda. If the eye came out, then we're allowed to do certain things on Shabbat. So it's a bit of stira. So the Beit Yosef says, מתבאר מתוך הדינים שיבואו בסימן זה, וגם ממה שכתב בסימן הקודם. So we'll explain in this siman, Shin Chavchet, which is the siman of refuah on Shabbat. החושש במתניו, says the Gemara, לא יסוך שמן וחומץ. The person who has a pain, discomfort, shouldn't put on oil or vinegar, since it's a refuah b'Shabbat. We're choshesh of shchikat semanim. V'had asrin asur k'uf Shabbat. That we say it's asur to do anything on Shabbat. Pshita delav b'cholesh yesh bo sakana. It's clear that someone who's ill, we know, pikuach nefesh doche Shabbat, v'ruchu nefesh doche kol Torah kula. Gemara Masechet Yoma, which he asked, what's the makor that pikuach nefesh doche Shabbat, and pikuach nefesh is doche lechor kol Torah kula, lechora, chutz mishlosha devarim. Pshita delav v'cholesh yesh bo sakana. Hare mechalim alav et haShabbat, v'gam ein lomar. What about another category? Chole sheyesh bo sakanat eivar. We said ayin demarda. Gemara says ayin demarda. Ayin demarda says Rashi. The eye is out. It's ma'ayem latzet. I think it's the lashon of Rashi. We're worried. We're choshesh that they're going to lose the use of the eye, or we're going to limit the use of the eye. B'shelat tova. So that the horror is a sakanat eivar. We see that the Gemara you're allowed to do refuah. שהרי אפילו מלאכות הרבנן עושים לו על ידי ישראל. כמו שיבאר, וחולה שאין בו סכנה כלל, חולה שאין בו סכנה, someone who's sick, אין בו סכנה, then יכול על ידי נוכרי. מי העושים לו צרכיו? So when a person is sick, even if they're not in danger, person is in danger, even person not in danger, כל חולה שאין בו סכנה, we do מלאכה על ידי נוכרי. So what does it mean? It says the Beit Yosef, the Gemara tells us, that you're not allowed to do any melacha Shabbat. You're not the kol refuah asur Shabbat. It shows a lot of things that mutar. You just said cholesh yesh b'sakana, cholesh b'shem b'sakana, sakana ivar. So what is it talking about? Al ken de b'yesh lo ken yomar b'yesh bo michush ba'alma. It's talking about someone has something discomfort. V'hu mitchazek v'olech kebari. And he's walking around happy, or at least kebari. The kol gai gavna in materim afilu shvut edivrei. If you're michush ba'alma, then you're not allowed to do anything. Then that's what the Gemara means, that it says you're not to do refuah b'Shabbat. Afilu denochri velo od el afilu shvut edivreihem, even shvut edivreihem, but she'ein behem mishum melacha gozru mishum shchikat samanim. Kach em divrei Magid Mishneh, Varan, and others, the Rashba. So the Shulchan Aruch seems to suggest there are four. If we listen carefully, there are four categories of cholim. Chole sheyesh bo sakana, that's the most severe. That allowed to do anything. Go nefesh, tochel Shabbat. The least is michush ba'alma. What's michush ba'alma? So the Beit Yosef already said, umitchazek v'olech kebari. It's someone that's he's walking around. He seems to be okay. It's okay. He's got michush ba'alma. The Sheila Tova, how do we define that? We'll get to that in a moment. And there's two in-between categories. Sakanat Eva. And Sakanat Eva nimevin. Sakanat Eva means someone who's got a danger to a limb. How do we define danger? The Sheila in a moment. And there's Choleh she'en bo sakana. What does Choleh she'en bo sakana mean? What is the category of Choleh she'en bo sakana? What does it mean? What's the definition? How do we define that? Yes. Can't do normal activities. Like play the piano. You know the guy comes, he goes through an operation, he comes out and he says, so the doctor says, you'll be fine. He said, will I be able to play the piano? The doctor says, yes. He says, it's wonderful because I couldn't play the piano before. So that's the Sheila. Is that considered to be, that's the Choleh? The Sheila Tova? So one you say is he can't do normal activities. What else? Anybody else? Another definition of Choleh she'en bo sakana? It's an occurrence that we have every single Shabbat. Every single Shabbat you have a question about Choleh she'en bo sakana. What is it? We don't even know what it is. Yes. Staying in bed. Sheila Tova? Mutsuyan? Ken. Choleh kol gufo. What does that mean? Choleh kol gufo. Sheila Tova. So we have a very, very important category of halacha. The Shulchan Aruch, the Beit Yosef says it. The Shulchan Aruch brings it in. Remember, it's a long Shulchan Aruch. If you didn't see, you'll see it. B'ezrat Hashem Shin Chafchet. That he has a long description of the possible permutations, machlokes rishonim, as to what you're allowed to do for Choleh she'en bo sakana. We're not going to get into that because it's not that relevant for our discussion today. But we never defined what Choleh she'en bo sakana. Choleh she'en bo sakana אני מבין. סכנה. מיחוש ב'alma אני מבין. הולך ומתחזק ובריא. What's Choleh she'en bo sakana? זו שאלה טובה. So the Shulchan Aruch says there in the Rambam says, in Ilchot Shabbat, Perik Bet, Halacha Aleph, the Chuya hi Shabbat etzel sakanat nefashot. It comes to sakanat nefashot, there's no Shabbat. The Chuya. Not Hutra, but the Chuya, you already know, it's a machloket, whether it's the Chuya, the Hutra, the Rambam's posek, the Chuya. Kishar kol ha-mitzvot. Lefichach, therefore, Choleh sheyesh bo sakana, osim lo kol tzarah b'Shabbat. We do whatever he needs. Al pi rofe uman shel oto makom. Who defines what's choleh or not choleh? Rofe oman. What's rofe oman? Sheila Tova? Sheila Tova? I'm in the middle of writing my PhD on that. What's a rofe oman? Sheila Tova? How do we define oman in a place in which there was no medical training? Who decides who's uman in a place in which there was no medical schools and nobody went to medical school? Sheila Tova? We mentioned before the Aruch HaShulchan in the previous year that he says drisha v'chakira me'arofim. He says it about Ptichat HaKever. You have to go and ask doctors. Which doctors did the Aruch HaShulchan ask? So in Novardok, there were 11 people that were in Mitasek in Refuah. 2 of them had any sort of medical training. They never went to medical school, none of them. And that's what the Aruch HaShulchan calls Rofim. Sheila Tova. Sheila Tova. Tov. What? Do we have cities nowadays? Now it's the whole world is one. So Sheila Tova. You have to read the PhD. Sheila Tova. Tov. Safek shehu tzarich. לחלל עליו את השבת, ספק שאינו צריך. It's a ספק whether you need to מחלל שבת. We don't know. וכן אם אמר רופא לחלל עליו שבת ורופא אחר אמר אינו צריך, then what do? ודאי, מחללים את השבת, ספק פיקוח נפש. ספק פיקוח נפש, תוך התורה. There's a limit to what's a ספק. There's a limit to what's a ספק פיקוח נפש. Let's imagine that I would say, ספק פיקוח נפש, so every Shabbat I'm going to go to the beach in Eretz Yisrael. Why? Because there's a chance that on this Shabbat somebody will be drowning and I know how to save their life. So since it's a safek pikuach nefesh, it's given me a heter to go to the beach every week. That's clearly not halacha. You understand? Zelo halacha. So there has to be some sort of level of safek. The Tzitz Eliezer speaks about that when he explains that the Gemara of Nafal alav mapolet. Why are you allowed to save him when you're not allowed to save him? So it's a Sheila Tova. What's the limit of pikuach nefesh? Says the Shulchan Aruch, Shin Chafchet, Sif Bet, מי שיש לו חולש או סכנה מצווה לחלל שבת. וזריב הרי משובח, והשואל הרי זה שופך דמים, we all know the Gemara. So let's imagine, so that's a very nice, interesting idea. Yafeh, we came all the way from Eretz Yisrael to tell you the Shulchan Aruch that you can hear from the Shulchan Aruch. You can actually open it up, it's on the shelf. How does this relate to fertility? So is there a case in fertility that's potentially
life-threatening. So the truth is that fertility in of itself, and we'll speak about it in a moment in greater detail, is elective. There's no chovah, there's no refuah, there's no danger that a person is in that are needed to have treatment. It's elective. It's something that you choose. However, within treatment, what we do for all fertility treatment, it doesn't matter whether it's IVF or IUI or whatever you're doing, or even basically ovulation stimulation or induction, is we give hormones. That's what just a little bit of biology, is that the brain sends a message, the hypothalamus sends a message to the gonads, in the case of a woman, ovaries, to produce eggs. That is given, that's a hormone, or hormones are messages that come from the brain through the blood, as opposed to messages that come like here. I feel that clapping, I can feel it on my hands. That comes through that's not a hormone, that comes through my nervous system. But the hormones are the changes. So I see people in this room have beards. In fact, you have beards is because you have testosterone. That's a hormone that comes to your body that enables you to grow a beard. That says you're male. Okay. So hormones, there's a hormone that comes called follicle stimulating hormone. When the body responds to that, when the ovary responds to that, there's an uptake that says, enough, we got enough FSH, thank you very much, we're good. What if the body doesn't respond to that, then the brain produces more and more FSH. So we give hormones that are either FSH, either follicle stimulating hormone, or lower level clomiphene citrate, which stops that uptake, which says we're going to break that message, and therefore the body doesn't know that you've got enough, so it keeps producing more FSH. What's the problem with that? The problem with that is that we can cause hyperstimulation. I'll just read you quickly. Hyperstimulation is I'll just read what I ran from my notes here, is an exaggerated response to excess hormones. Generally what happens when I give hormones is the body creates what's called superovulation. Ovulation is to respond to one egg. Superovulation is to the body releases more than one egg. It can be one. It could be two. We had a woman this week, one of my rabbanim. We have 15. Machon Pua was established 30 years ago in Yerushalayim, founded by Rabbi Nachum Borstein. And today we have 15 rabbanim in Yerushalayim, 5 women who counsel 58. We have 80 women on a hotline in the evening for more intimacy questions, personal questions. We have 2 rabbanim here in North America, one in New York and one in Los Angeles. We have 2 rabbanim in Mexico. We have a presence in Paris, and we have daughter organizations, South Africa and Australia. Machon Pur gets about 300 calls every single day. So every Thursday we get a lot of Shabbat calls. Thursday, Friday, Shabbat. So I have 14 rabbanim that I work with, colleagues. And one of them came to me this week. Yedidi Lavi is a Dayan in the Bet Adin Yerushalayim. And he had the following question. A woman came and she had 35 follicles. There's supposed to be 35 follicles. That's a lot. And it came out, of course, that it has to be on Shabbat. And the doctor said, look, if we leave it to Motzei Shabbat or Sunday, it's a big problem. So it became a question of doing treatment. Actually, on Friday afternoon it was. So there was this case, hyperstimulation. So what's the ramification? How did he get to it, or what's the ramification? Okay, so hyperstimulation potentially is life-threatening, because what will happen if we have if there's too many follicles and the ovary ruptures, internal bleeding is potentially life-threatening. Now, I've never had the case in my entire life. I've been in Machon Pur for 25 years. I never had a case of anybody dying from it. But in the literature it says it's potentially life-threatening. Is that safek pikuach nefesh? Potentially life-threatening, I think, is a shelav. Safek pikuach nefesh, shelat tova. So that's the only case I think that we have in fertility that's safek pikuach nefesh. Nothing else I can think of in anywhere that has safek. Unless, I don't know, I never heard of such anything that's safek pikuach nefesh. So it's not cholesh sheyesh bo sakana, apart from hyperstimulation, which is rare, very, very rare. I said there's a case that he came in, it was all flustered, 35 eggs, that's a lot. You get usually between 10, 15, and usually we know how to deal with it, and usually it's not a problem. But that was an unusual case. That's a case in which we have, we'll see bleeding. There are women who bleed because of ovulation. We know that, right? It's also related to the previous class about Ilchot Nida, women who bleed because of ovulation. There are also chickens that bleed because of ovulation. You know that? Chickens bleed because of ovulation. So, we'll leave it on. Why we get eggs? Why we get blood and eggs? Okay. So the most severe category of chole sheyesh bo sakana, probably not appropriate here. So we're going down one category. So let's go to the bottom category. What's michush ba'alma? Shulchan Aruch says michush ba'alma, shin chavchet sif aleph, mi sheyesh lo michush ba'alma v'hu mitchasek v'olech kebari, asur lasot lo shum refuah v'afilu al yedei akum gezerah shema mishum shchichat mamanim. What's the category that Shulchan Aruch says? Olech v'mitchasek v'olech kebari. You see him, he looks okay. Someone that's experiencing fertility treatment, the mitchasek v'olech kebari, they look to be fine. They're beseder gamur. In fact, ad kedei kach, that I'm sure that we all know, maybe very, very closely, people who are undergoing fertility treatment that we don't even know about it. It could be good friends of ours. We don't know that they're undergoing fertility treatment. When you're going to have a shul and you're going to talk about things, you have to be so sensitive. As the Gemara says, that Yaakov says to Rachel, what do you want from me? Says the Gemara, what did he say? It's not me, it's a Kodesh Baruch Hu. They have to be such a sensitivity to speaking, because you don't know in your community who's going through fertility treatment. And you'll only know if they come to you and ask you a Sheila, and they'll only come to you and ask you a Sheila if they feel that they have someone to listen to. Someone who's going to listen to them, someone who's going to talk to them, someone's going to understand what they're talking about, someone's going to be empathetic, someone who's knowledgeable. Very important in your kihila. That first of all, you should be knowledgeable in that. You should learn about it. And maybe it's good to have. I was just now in a kihila in New Jersey. They're having a Women's Health Day. That's a very, very important thing. Every shul should have a Women's Health Day, which is completely tailor-made for the age of the women in your shul. The younger women, you speak about fertility. The older women, you speak about menopause. The older than that, you speak about other postmenopausal assets. The things about myomas, about cancer. They should speak about in your shul. There should be something about fertility, because it's very common. About 1 in 7 couples have a problem with fertility. Doesn't mean everybody's going to need to do in vitro fertilization. Doesn't mean everybody's not going to get pregnant. There's a question: how long do you have to wait in order to decide that we have a fertility problem? So generally, the accepted opinion among all of the medical associations is 1 year. Why do you get to 1 year? Because the chance of getting pregnant every month is about 20%. That's in optimal conditions. So if you were less than 6 months, we're going to say you're still in the statistical average. But that's only with optimal conditions. Who says you have optimal conditions every month? And therefore, we times that 6 months by 2. So there's a big question, halakha. At what point do we say you're allowed to do treatment? Doesn't get into even beyond Shabbat. Just to do a simple assumed analysis, question of otzat zeh levatala, it's a question of when you're allowed to do that. So Moshe Zatshuvi says, many people will get pregnant in a year. Many people will get pregnant after 2 years. I.e., for some people who just left it, they will get pregnant. What will we do? It's very, very important, is to reduce pressure. The pressure comes from their internal pressure, their societal pressure, their things that they're looking around, everybody's pregnant. So we have to be conscious of that in our kihila. In our kihila, we have to be conscious of don't only do children's activities. We had in our what do you do for Purim? It's Purim now, almost Purim. Tu B'Shvat's not real a chag, right? So Purim's a real chag. So Tu B'Shvat don't say Tachnun on a Thursday. That's already almost a complete chag. But Purim is going to be on a Friday. So Tan Esther's on a Thursday. So Purim in every kihila, Purim is a children's day, right? It's a children's day. We had in our shul, when we first started the shul. So we had a party in the evening in our house just for adults, no kids. And there were people who said, we never ever celebrated Purim before. We don't have any kids. Our kids are out of the home. We never had Purim. Think about that. Think about people in your kihila, that for them Purim is the worst day of the year. Because they don't have any kids. They don't have a mishlach manos. They don't have anybody dressed up. So be sensitive to that. So, michush ba'alma is someone looks well. They look well. That seems to be mamash exclaim, mamash fertility. If that's the case, if the shir would end here, then what we say, you can't do anything. Why? Because we just said that for michush ba'alma, you can't do anything. Afilu de akum. You can't get gzerat tzchakim. You couldn't take medication. You couldn't take clomid. You couldn't take shots. You couldn't take any. There'll be no treatment at all. So if the end of the day the answer was that a fertile couple are considered to be michush ba'alma, then it would be that would be it. There's not much you can do. And there are a lot of people that say like that. Rav Neuvid told me that. Zetzal. Rav Neuvid, who's the Bala Simcha, Bala Deya of Ilchot Shabbat, So he said that Michush Bal, they're not sick. And he had a beautiful, beautiful bracha. He said to many people, I've used this bracha many times. He said, many people ask him, okay, but I need to do treatment. He said, doing treatment is only shtadlus. No one promises that treatment is going to be successful. It's shtadlus. So keeping Shabbat is also shtadlus. He says, on the schut that you kept Shabbat, you'll have children. I used that bracha many, many times. Not in cases where I really thought I needed to do treatment. Cases that were questionable, that you think is guli, Rav Noivitz bracha. So then we get to the category of Chol Hashem B'Sakana. How do we define Chol Hashem B'Sakana? So Gemara Masechet Shabbat says, Amar Rav Hamnuna, Devar Shem B'Sakana Omer L'Nochri V'Oseh. Says Rashi, what's Devar Shem B'Sakana? Chole, listen carefully, Shim Lo Yasu Lo Refuah, Zo Ein Mesukan Lamut, Umikol Makom Tzarich Hula. Say it again. Rashi says that if we didn't do this treatment, the person wouldn't die, but they need this treatment. Rashi doesn't talk about the level of illness, by the way. The fact that they need the treatment is essential. It's essential treatment, but they're not going to die if you don't give it to them. The Aruch HaShulchan, we mentioned before, says, "V'kol ele devarim ein bechole shemutal b'mita." How do we define, says the Aruch HaShulchan, chole sheyesh bo sakana? So chole she'en bo sakana, you got to be in bed. If you're not in bed, what are you? Michush ba'alma. I.e., the time in which you change from being michush ba'alma to chole she'en bo sakana, if you're in bed or not in bed. It's about pashut. I.e., there's got to be some siman, an external siman. How do we define chole sheyesh bo sakana? Rafei Oman. Rafei Oman's going to come and say, what? I don't know if you're going to die, you're not going to die. Every machala is like that. And therefore, that's no difference between michush ba'alma. What's michush ba'alma? Michush ba'alma is someone who has a headache. You have a migraine. Every Shabbat I get up, I have a migraine. Every Shabbat. Usually I get up quite early. Usually by the time I get to shul, it's going. And by the time I get to the drasha, I'm usually fine. That's the club. That's not it's like michush ba'alma. But it's still a machala. If I was on a regular day, maybe I take a kadur, maybe I take a Tylenol. But so I need it. So what? Where did you change from michush ba'alma to chole she'en bo sakana? Says the Gemara. Tabamita. Says the Aruch HaShulchan, if you're not in bed, you're not a chole. If you're walking around, that's a michush ba'alma. It's come. You got a headache. Maybe people here don't feel so well. They had a little bit of a cough. That's a michush ba'alma. So the category in which you stop being michush ba'alma and you become chole, says the Aruch HaShulchan, you're in bed. Mod pashut. Or, again, it's a little bit complicated. Yoshev al mitato. It doesn't have to be in bed. What we call house-ridden. Why didn't you come to shul on Shabbat? I wasn't feeling well. Oh, every Shabbat I go to my father. Sheirich Yamin Batov Bezat Hashem is 89 years old. And every Shabbat he either went to shul or didn't go to shul. And that's always the discussion. If he didn't go to shul, why didn't he go to shul? And if he went to shul, how bad was shul this week? Every week it's bad. Every week the Balkor was terrible, the Chazan was terrible, this was terrible, it was terrible, terrible. So that's, I said, at least you have consistency in your life. That's always a good thing to see. So how do I know he's at home? He's at chole she'en bo sakana. He's at home. Could he take a kador? Yes. Chole. Agav, the Rama, you remember, says that a child is always chole she'en bo sakana. Question why? So a child doesn't have that ability to know at what point he's sick or not sick. He always has some question about his ability to understand his own situation. But I know if I'm at sick, I stay home. שאין ביכולתו לצאת מפתח ביתו, זה ארוך השולחן, ויש בו חילוק בין יש בו סכנה לסכנה. אבל מי שיש לו מיחוש בעלמא, מיחוש בראש או במעיו, you got a headache or a stomach ache, או בלב, you got a bit of a heartache, וכיוצא בזה, והוא מתחזק והולך בריא, you're walking around well, כמו שיש חלושים מפני שכים וחושים, שיש להם שיעול, someone's coughing, וכיוצא בזה, והולכים ונוסעים ועושים כל סכם, they go to work, they come to shul, they go to the beit midrash, ובבלי, okay, you're coughing, okay, you cough, you don't cough over other people, but you're okay. אין להם דין חולה כלל. ואסור לעשות להם רפואה. אפילו על ידי אינו יהודי. אך מי שיש לו מיחוש שעל ידי זה נחלש כל גופו, someone said before, if your whole body's sick, ואף שמתחזק והולך אכילו חוב בכבדות ובחלישות, he goes, he's fetching, he's schwach, he doesn't look good, even though he's actually can leave his house. Okay, dino kanafal mishkav v'choleshem b'sakana. That's as though he's not. Why did he come out? He's the balkora. What's he going to do? He's going to be at home. It's a achrayimot kedoshim. What's he going to do? It's a long, or even worse, tazrir mitzvah. Even though it's not a longer parsha, it's a much more complicated. Who v'hi? So he has to come. Or lo alenu's the rabbi. Rabbi has to go to shul. He's not going to come to shul. He prepared the drasha of the year. This Punky doesn't feel well Friday morning. Chaval. On this drasha, I'm going to have to go. So he's actually choleh, but it's as though he was in bed. The Aruch HaShulchan says, "Mod pashut, you're in bed, you're choleh. You're not in bed, you're not choleh." The Lita'im, we know, always follow the Aruch HaShulchan. So Rav Dov Lior Shlita is the Rav of Hebron, a huge Talmid Chacham. He's a Litai, and he Aruch HaShulchan. Aruch HaShulchan says that. I said to him, a couple don't have children. They're in bed? No, they're not in bed. They're michush b'ala. That's it. The Sitz Eliezer has a fascinating tshuva. The Sitz Eliezer was asked about a gentleman who has a stutter, and he has to do breathing exercises. I had a Talmud who was a mumche in speech impediments. He knew what it was. I didn't know what it was. And he's asked, can he do it on Shabbat? If you tell me you don't have to do any exercise on Shabbat, so maybe it's asur to do the breathing exercises. So the Sitz Eliezer is the following. L'dati baro she'ish kazeh is a stutterer who bichlal, everybody's sitting down. It's going to be a fascinating tshuva. Choleh hagam she'en bo sakana. Wait a second. The guy is walking around kibari. He's not. How's he become a choleh? How did you get from choleh? Says the Sitz Eliezer. The choleh no bevrei kol haguf. His problem in his voice box, his larynx. Because the val, listen carefully. Somebody said it here recently before. Shechaser la'adam liyoto shalem keyeter b'nei adam nikra shu choleh. Somebody who is sub-functioning less than other people, that's choleh. Sometimes you're choleh in your heart, sometimes you're choleh in your head, sometimes you're choleh in kol gufon, sometimes you're choleh in your gonads, in your sperm production or in your egg production. That's choleh. ולא משנה אם זה מתבטא בצורה של כאבי ראש, ידיים, רגליים וכדומה. So the Sitz Eliezer has a fascinating definition of choleh. Agav, much better than the definition of the World Health Organization. We have a terrible definition of health. You look at it, you Google it, and you see it's terrible. The Sitz Eliezer has a much better definition. The definition of choleh is, are you functioning or not functioning? If you're sub-functioning, אתה choleh. Sometimes you're choleh that it's dangerous, so you're sub-functioning. If your heart isn't functioning, you're choleh sheyesh bo sakana. And if you're sub-functioning, but you're still working, you're not in danger, then you're choleh she'en bo sakana. So the whole case is sub-functioning. And it comes to a point in which it's not really sub-functioning, having a headache. That's michush b'alma. That's his definition. Mon pashut. If that's the case, then avadai, we can say fertility fits into this category. Person's obviously not functioning. Look, everybody else has children. They're not children. Says the Shmirat Shabbat kirchata. ומצטער הרבה, he says this in the Moroksia, the dino כחולה שאין בו סכנה. מצטער הרבה. Different category. זה תלכל שבת, בדיני אמר לנוחי, מביא דינו כמקצת חולה. יש לומר, הכל לפי עניין. Says the Shmirat Shabbat kirchata. Someone who's מצטער הרבה, that's considered to be חולה. Maybe חולה שיש בו אין בו סכנה, maybe דינו מיחוש. Depends on the circumstance. But if a person's in terrible personal anguish, that's considered to be choleh she'en bo sakana. Says the Gemara in Masechet Shabbat in Daf Nun Amud Bet. Megarer adam gildei tzoa vegildei makash al besoro. A person's allowed to remove, not talking about Shabbat agav, talking about beged isha. A person's allowed to remove a scab or feces from their face. Bishvil tzaro. If you're suffering, it's causing you pain. Your scab's going pain. Aval im bishvil yapot. If you remove to look beautiful, asur, it's beged isha. Lo yilbash. Says the Tosafot, דבר נפלא. בשביל צערו, אם אין לו צער אחר, אלא שמתבייש ללך בין בני אדם, if the tsar he has is I'm embarrassed to go among people, I'm frightened that I look, I'm going to be, it's a busha, it's an embarrassment. Shari, it's mutter. The ein lechar sar gadol mize. there's no greater tsar. We were at a shiur of Rav Osher Weiss. I'm surprised he didn't bring that Tosfot. That beautiful Tosfot. He was talking about tsar. It's a beautiful Tosfot, but Tosfot defines what's tsar. Tsar is I'm embarrassing someone else. I'm not sub-functioning physically necessarily, but I have tsar. Now, if we say the mitzta'er kol gufo is considered to be choleh, then maybe we can bring these two dinim together. And we say that the infertile couple definitely have tsar. Gemara tells us that arba nechshavim kamet, and one of them is misha en lo yeladim. So therefore, maybe we can say that's choleh. So Rav Shechter said to me, then maybe the other one there is someone who's poor. Is someone poor also choleh? Good question. That's not so pashut. There's a lot of weight, a lot of research to say that definitely fertility is connected to depression, caused by depression, and connected to depression, causes depression. It's clearly that's for men and for women. Women we know, but it's even studied for men. So can we bring together? So I asked as Rebbe said, a lot of poskim, and I'll tell you the sikkum of the poskim that I saw was the following. Michush ba'alma, we always said Rav Neuvert. Rav Dovli also said, we just mentioned. Rav Farkas, Rav Kutel Farkas is one of the great poskim of Chabad, also very close to Machon Puah. He also said, Michush ba'alma. Can't do anything on Shabbat. What do you on Shabbat? Do before Shabbat, do it after Shabbat. Rav Nevensal Shlita said to me, Sakanat Evar. Ma Sakanat Evar? There's no Sakanat Evar. He said, no, the Evar isn't working. The Evar isn't working, that you can see that it's not functioning. So it's like we bring in the Sitziliezer together with the Gemara. So he said Sakanat Evar. Now, in most cases, it's not true. In most cases, it's not Sakanat Evar. If we look at someone and we tested them and there's no real reason, that's what we call unexplained infertility. That's a very, very undiagnosed condition, meaning we don't know what the problem is. There's a problem, we don't know what it is. That's hard to say, yes, Sakanat Evar. If someone doesn't have a functioning ovary and I give you hormones that make your ovary function, that I understand. That's Sakanat Evar. And most of the poskim said the following. Rav Zilberstein told me, also in the name of Rav Elyoshiv, he said, what do you mean? It's a pasuk. It's a pasuk. Havali banim v'mayin meta nochi. The tsar that a person has fertility, that's considered choleh. Pashut. Pashut, no, it's not a question. Choleh. Choleh shem bo sakana, but it's choleh. Rav Eliyahu told me the same. Rav Zalman Nechemia Goldberg Zatzal told me the same. Rav Yaakov Ariel, Yebadel Chaim Awokim told me the same. And many poskim thought choleh shem bo sakana. Choleh shem bo sakana, we said, oh, so we have Amir al-Anochri, we can do certain things on Shabbat. So let's speak a little bit about what can be done on Shabbat. So testing. An ovulation kit, we can test ovulation by a blood test. Well, we don't need a blood test. But we can do it by testing temperature. Rav Tzitz Eliezer said you're allowed to test temperature, you're allowed to do temperature testing on Shabbat to find out ovulation. Why? Shouldn't be a Pegiyah and Oneg Shabbat. Okay, how's a biduk a Pegiyah and Oneg Shabbat? I didn't understand. What does it mean? We're testing ovulation in the morning. It's basic body temperature in the morning. Basic body temperature. So what's the nafka mina? So I find out Shabbat morning I'm ovulating. So what do? That my husband doesn't go to shul, we have relations? We didn't have relations yesterday? Like what exactly is the nafka mina of find out? Oneg Shabbat is a very wide category. A home test where you color, where a woman urinates onto a strip, like a strip of a pregnancy test. That Rav Neuvert said to me is not a problem on Shabbat. Why you throw it away? You have no Indian of the tzviyah. It's not a problem. It's not real tzviyah. Semen analysis can be done on Shabbat, but we don't need to do it on Shabbat. An ultrasound only in a case where we think there's sakana. Stam do an ultrasound. Do it Friday. Do it Sunday. You don't need to do it on Shabbat. There's no reason to do it on Shabbat. But taking medication that you take every day. Shchikat semanim. On the other hand, many achronim we know say shchikat semanim is not shaykh today in our generation. Without getting into the sugi, we'll learn it in the Chol Shabbat. There's a question about medication. Doesn't necessarily have to be exactly at the right time every day. It's also an important question. I have to take the shots every day. If you take it every day at 8 o'clock in the morning, you can take it at any time. You can take it before Shabbat and after Shabbat. Taking shots. Can you take a shot? Not shots like that. Shots like that. So shots. So there's someone wrote, there was a book on fertility, old book. And he wrote that it's a question of intravenous injections where we do it into the vein. So there you want to see the blood's coming out to make sure you're hitting a vein, not hitting something else. It'll kill you. So, intravenous injections are sheila. Subcutaneous, where it's under the skin, is not a question. It's very true, but I don't know any intravenous injection in fertility. And look, I am. So you have to also know a little bit about a mitzvah to give a psak at the end of the day. So it's not true. So all subcutaneous, lechora, intramuscular is not a problem. You're not drawing blood. We don't need to do it. Don't need to do it. But there's a process, without getting into the whole details. There's a process in which we prepare the body, and then we give a last shot, which releases the egg. That last shot has to be time sensitive. That has to be Shabbat. Also, you're talking about sometimes 3 days of Rosh Hashanah. Sheila. IUI and insemination. Well, a Yid can't do it. It's only Amir al-Enochi, we said. So we have a non-Jewish doctor, an entire non-Jewish staff, not so easy to find. A hospital that has no Jews working there. Definitely not in this area. There's a lot of people. There's a lot of Jews working in this fertility field, even outside of the city, but definitely in large Jewish centers. The other thing is you can time it. There are many doctors who say, I never ever did. I have a friend never ever did an insemination on Shabbat. Why? I time it. I know how I'm giving the medication. I know it's going to happen. So therefore, very important when you tell your kila, you tell the couple asking you, when you're preparing, tell the doctor mirosh that I'm going to have a problem with Shabbat. And the doctor will be able to time it. Don't give me the question on a Friday afternoon. Ask already a month ago. A month ago, tell the doctor, on this and these days, we're going to be, these and these days, the Chagim. Agav, a good idea not to start treatment around the Chagim. Because you have either 3 days, or 2 days and a 1 day, and you're going to have Shabbat. We don't do it around the Chagim. Don't do it around Shabbat, not around Chagim. Yes?
When you say start treatment, I don't know. When you say start treatment, I just don't know what that means.
So that's a long question, but it's about, we have, in order to get a woman to ovulate, we said we're giving treatment to get her to ovulate. And especially for an IUI, we're not giving clomifene, we're giving them FSH and LH. So that's about a 2-week process. That we're monitoring a woman, we're giving her medication, and we're seeing how she ovulates. So it's an excellent question, right? So I know that mirosh. Now, if I give the treatment I start on this day and that day, I can make an assumption what's going to happen. But also, if I look at the dosage, I can play around with it a little bit. So it's important to know that. So it worked out. It has to be IUI. It has to be on Shabbat. So the other question, we have a non-Jewish doctor. Question is, how do we get to the hospital? How do we get to him back to, and can we get back from the hospital? Getting to the hospital, he says maybe it's treatment. We can ask a non-Jew. Getting back is not so pashut. I can ask a non-Jew to take me back. What's the problem? Stay in the hospital. Right? The other thing we have is that every treatment, every fertility treatment, we have halachic supervision to make sure there's no mistake made in the lab. There was a very famous case recently in Israel in which a woman gave birth to a child that was not her own genetic child, not hers and not her husband's. And recently, 2 weeks ago, the judge decided that the child, after 2 years, will go back to the genetic parents after being raised by the birth parents. Terrible, terrible case. So we have halachic supervision. You have to realize, is the supervisor able to get there on Shabbat? We just had a case now. I was speaking to the head of my supervision when we met this morning, head of supervision in New York, and she has a case in which it's in a slightly out of the way place on a Friday in 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I just can't put anybody there. It's not even on a Shabbat. It's on a Friday. I can't put someone there. So you have to think about that as well. That's IUI. That's insemination, where we take the sperm and we inject it. IVF, in vitro fertilization, as a gentleman asked, is much, much longer and more complex process. That involves not only giving hormonal stimulation, but drawing the eggs, bringing the sperm in ways that we're not going to speak about today because it's not a halachic, it's not a Shabbat question, and bringing them together, developing it to between 3 and 7 days in the laboratory and putting it back. So we have retrieval. The egg is ready. Do we do retrieval on Shabbat? In Eretz Yisrael, we never do retrievals on Shabbat, only in places where the doctors want to make more money. My wife and I were in a particular city for Shabbat once in a hotel, and opposite the hotel there's a hospital, a fertility clinic. And we come out for our stroll after Kiddush in the morning, and I see 3 doctors that I know outside the clinic. I said to my wife, look how sad this situation is. All of those 3, believe me, are set up financially for life. And kulam masudarim. Why are they doing it? To make more money? They could do it on Friday. They could do it on Sunday. There's no reason to have it on Shabbat if you know how to time it. The public hospitals don't do it on Shabbat. But let's say here, we have. It suddenly works on Shabbat. It's a non-Jewish doctor. Can we do the retrieval on Shabbat? Sometimes it could be, if we don't do the retrieval, like we said in the woman with the 35 eggs, it could potentially be dangerous. So that's cholesh en b'sakana. But even cholesh en b'sakana, we can maybe amir ala nochri, talking about a non-Jewish doctor. Can we do the transfer on Shabbat? Well, a lot of times the transfer can be done later. I said between 3 and 7 days. I once sat with an embryologist here in the city. We sat for about an hour going through every single permutation, when we could bring it earlier and when we could make it later. You can say it, they'll make it later. Sometimes say, well, that will compromise the treatment. We have Rav Noived's bracha. However, we're talking about a couple who are older, who the limited chance of getting pregnant, that may be very significant from that day. We have a question of maybe it's borer, especially for a Yid. Non-Jew is not a problem. So we have a lot of questions related to treatment. Most of the times we're able to get away from it. The biggest question is really taking the shots. That's really the biggest question. You also have to, not everybody can administer it to themselves, they have to go to a doctor. There's another Sheila. The Gemara Masechet Shabbat says that we do Brit Milah, a child is born on Shabbat, Bayom afilu b'Shabbat, but only in case in which it's Vada and only in case it's Safek. What is the case of Safek? The Gemara brings Yotzei Dofen. The child was born through the wall, what we call Caesarean. What Shakespeare said in Macbeth about Macduff. He was from his mother's womb untimely plucked. So, you're a Shakespearean scholar. That's all I remember from high school. That's it. Zeo Nigmao. He was from his mother's womb untimely plucked. So the other case it brings is a person's child is born mahul, or born androgynous, or born ben hashmashot. Why? Pasuk. Isha ki tazur v'yada zachar, and then she has tumat nida ki made nidat vata, ubayom hashmini imol b'sar orto. So when we have the continuum, then we have tefillah, we have a brit milah on Shabbat, afilu b'Shabbat. Says the Gemara in Masechet Chagiga, a famous Gemara. Arba nichnasu lepardes. One of them was Ben Zoma. Ben Zoma came out crazy. A crazy Talmid Chacham is a very important thing to have in your Rolodex. Lama? Because you always have crazy questions. You can't ask a regular Talmid Chacham a Gemara. It's a lot of team. But a crazy Talmid Chacham, oh. So they asked the crazy Talmid Chacham, what was the question? Shalu et Ben Zoma betula sheibra ma'ulo kohen gadol. You have a betula who's pregnant. She can marry kohen gadol or not marry kohen gadol? What? Shela tova? Don't know. No, says the Gemara, how's it possible? Chashinu l'Shmuel. Shmuel damar, yochol ani liv'ol kama bilot below dam. Shmuel said I can have relations without breaking the hymen. Or Dilma, maybe the Shmuel lo shchicha. It's not common that Shmuel that you don't break the hymen through relations. Amali Shmuel lo sheyach v'chayshinan shema bam barati bra. Maybe she got pregnant in the bathtub. Says Rashi, what does it mean? Ken that in the bathtub a man went into the bathtub. There were general bathtubs. The one was like a swimming pool. And a man went in and ejaculated, a woman came in and then she got pregnant. Says Rabbeinu Hananel, V'zeh ma'aseh nisim, Ve'ena tme'a leida, She'en ani koreh ba isha ki tazriya. Says Rabbeinu Hananel, Ein po isha ki tazriya, therefore, Ein tumat leida, therefore, says from a zaman, so maybe the Brit Milah is not the Shabbat. If that's the case, IVF is mamash tabab ambati. Can you imagine how they learned that Gemara 200 years ago? What does it mean? What does Gemara mean in Tabab Bati? Now we have it, Tabab Bati, every single morning, 5 minutes from here. In all of you walk down 5th Avenue, want to go after another fertility clinic, have me Tabab Bati every single day. Says Rosh Hashanah, Sheila, he didn't say it as a psak. Rav Moti Halperin wants to say he said it as a psak. It's not a psak. I heard from his children, it's lo nachon. I never heard it from Rosh Hashanah directly, I heard it from his children. It's lo nachon, he didn't psak. But it's a Sheila. Can I bring me that doche Shabbat? So now you come to you have a shul. You know, there's a couple had IVF and they have a child born on Shabbat, Mazel Tov. Next Shabbat will be bris. There's no Tumat Leida, there's no Yom Shmini, Yibol B'Saulato. So Rav Ovadia said that the Brit Milah is on Shabbat. Why? The Gemara doesn't take a complete continuum of that pasuk. What is the pasuk? The pasuk has 4 clauses. Isha ki tazriya v'yalda zachar, first clause, or first 2 clauses. Tazriya, yalda zachar, tumat leida, and then b'yom hashmini. The Gemara's sveikot are all about leida. None of them are about conception. So therefore you can't say we have a complete continuum from Isha ki tazriya until b'yom hashmini. Rav Ovadia says, I reject Rabbi Hananel's assumption. Mordechai Eliyahu told me, Maseh Nisim, that's not Maseh Nisim. That, in the Baba and Bati is Maseh Nisim. Aval IVF is not Maseh Nisim. Why not? Not because it's common. Because he said you put zera and beitzit together, you put egg and sperm together. That's regular, normal. So I said to Rav Eliyahu, what would happen if I would create a sperm cell through haplodization? I would take a regular gametic cell and I would divide it into two, and I create a sperm cell. And I use that to implant the egg. Would that be considered to be Maseh Nisim? Said no. That's regular. Where the sperm cells are, that's very nice, but that doesn't change. So I said, okay, what if I clone an egg? Cloning, he said, that's maybe Maseh Nisim. Something that's unusual. No, it has to be something that's unnatural. But Rav Wosner Zatzal said that the Brit Milah does not doche Shabbat, but the Mol doesn't have to ask. However, later on in his shoot, he said he does. It's doche Shabbat. The most fascinating answer was from Rav Elyoshiv. Rav Elyoshiv told me, Brit Milah after IUI, insemination, doche Shabbat. After IVF, lo doche Shabbat. Why? Kach katav Rav Elchanan. That's it. You go into Rav Elyoshiv, you feel bad that you're disturbing him. Like there was, they said about Rav Chaim. There was a man who studied for 90 years and people came to disturb him. That was his life. Rav Elyoshiv, you felt like, I don't want to, but I had no idea what he just said. Like I walked out, I'm like, what just happened? So Rav Elchanan is a Kovet Shirim in Masechet Ktubot Aleph. He says the following. בפירוש רבנו חננאל חגיגה, מבואר דמתאמרה באמבטיה אינה צמאה לידה, דהיינו סתם לידה הכתובה בתורה, בלידה כדרך רגילה. Regular לידה is what's written in the Torah. What's the Torah? Regular intercourse. והיינו דסתם לידה הכתובה בתורה אין עיד בלידה כדרך הרגילה, כמו שכתוב למעלה, דכל דיני תורה נאמרו בכפי הרגיל. דיני תורה is whatever is normal. ולא שלא כדרכן, not in an unusual way, אלא דבר פשוט. וזה תלוי, הכל לפי הזמן או לפי המקום. That depends on the place, on the time. כגון במלאכת שבת. המוציא מפקו פטור. Someone who puts that in his elbows פטור, זה משנה מפורשת. מפני שאין הכדרך, הוצא בחול. אבל אילו נשתנו, let's imagine it changed, and it would be crazy world, that people would take things out on their sleeve. I don't know, a cell phone or something, they walk around with that. So if that would happen, what would it say? It says the Rav Elchanan, הכל מוציא מפקו ודאי הוא חייב גם בשבת. That would be a chiyuv d'oraita. He says Rav Elchanan that d'oraita would be the way that it's normally done. So he speaks about Shabbat, he speaks about Kilayim, he speaks about Rabbeinu Hananel. What did Rabbeinu Hananel say? That's a Maseh Nisim because it's unusual, not because it's unnatural. It's unusual. But he says IUI today is not unusual. Insemination is not unusual. Very, very okay. So what about IVF? Rabbi Elchanan didn't write about IVF. Again, Rabbi Elchanan was killed by the Nazis in 1944. The first IVF was in 1978. What happened those 33 years? So the tell you davar madhim. So I understand the svara. The svara that Rav Elyoshiv says is Rabbi Elchanan wrote about IUI as something normal. When it's normal, then the Brit Milah is doche Shabbat. It's not Maseh Nisim. IVF is still abnormal. About that, I asked Rav Elyoshiv, was already a relatively young man. He was maybe 99 at the time. He was young. A couple of years later, a couple went to him with exactly the same shit. That came from me. They went to him and they said, Rav Elyoshiv said that IVF also does the Brit Milah on Shabbat. Why? Because in those 2 years, there became more and more cases that became normal. It's not Maseh Nisim anymore. It stops being Maseh Nisim when it becomes the norm. The norm now is IVF. IVF is in Israel, 1 in every 20 births is after IVF. So it's a norm. It's a pashut. So the gedula of Rav Elyoshiv, that he's able to change his mind at the age of 100 plus, and the gedula of Rav Elchanan, I mentioned to Rav Shachter before we were talking to Beis Midrash, it's a beautiful Gemara. It's a beautiful idea. What does Rav Elchanan say? The Torah is Chaim. Torah isn't what happened on Har Sinai. Chadash Yisum in the Torah. Forget. Torah is what's going on now. What's going on now? We're writing now. That's what Torah is. Torah is now. Torah is a living thing. Torah is IVF. That's the way people get pregnant. That's considered to be normal for the Torah, not the Rabbanon. It's the Torah. So I think the Ma'aseh today is that everybody would say that Lama'aseh, the Brit Milah is Doche Shabbat, the way we get there, I think, is a very interesting journey, and also explains to us about how the poskim really started accepting fertility treatment much more, and that process of how everybody said at one point it was usher, and now became everybody says basically it's mutter. Not only mutter became the norm. I think it's a very fascinating process that Baruch Hashem I was able to be witness to in the past 25 years working for Pua. Everybody should be well and happy and not have any Kadosh Baruch Hu lo yasim machala b'mitzrayim alechem. But when we have questions about machala, we should know how to define what's choleh and what's bari, and be able to give a competent, appropriate halakhic response. Shalom, shalom.